Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
I grew up watching Star Trek. My mother was a huge fan of the original series, and I absolutely hated it. I was too young to understand the stories behind the costumes and appreciate the walls that the creator, Gene Roddenberry, was trying to tear down. Roddenberry portrayed a cast where people of different races, ethnicities, and species worked together in harmony. He even snuck in the first scripted interracial kiss between Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura, past censors in the episode Plato's Stepchildren. In this episode, the crew of the spaceship Enterprise are taken prisoner and telepathically controlled like puppets.
Woman, let's get on with it.
In the final year of my undergrad in psychology, I took a seminar course designed to help us develop our skills to conduct surveys. We would create our own survey and then we would analyze them as a group, sharing what worked well and what could use improvement. During one of these sessions, a student had asked about ethnicity and listed discrete categories, including white, black, Aboriginal. I'm of mixed heritage. My father is First Nations and my mother is white Canadian. When I raised my hand and said there was no box for me, my prof said, "Can't you just pick one?" And I was like, no. I then felt like I had to justify my stance, my identity, to the entire class as to why this didn't work. I explained that I was part of two very different cultures and that because my parents were divorced when I was very young, I bounced back and forth between them. Both these cultures were a part of me and my identity, and neither one of them played a dominant role. The class had a discussion, as young university students do, about how to decide which identity might be the dominant one and which category I should pick. It was never discussed that the survey in question itself was flawed, which ironically was the intent of the course. The whole point of that class was to look for flaws in our questions and improve our surveys. My objection to the question about how race was categorized was dismissed. I wasn't a theoretical exercise. I was there, physically raising my hand, and I was dismissed as not being statistically significant enough to warrant changing the question. We used to be called half-breeds. This term has fallen out of favor, as many derogatory terms have, but there has been no acceptable term that has come up in the ranks to replace it. People sometimes mistakenly include us in the category of Métis. However, Métis people have a distinct community. They are descendants of mixed-race people, but they have endured for generations and have developed their own culture and shared history. My lived experience has been that of both belonging and feeling apart from both the cultures I've been born into. I am a member of both cultures, but not 100%. I've experienced acceptance and rejection on both sides that I've internalized and lived in a quasi-state that does not come with a support system. I am not alone. There are many children of mixed heritage who share the same experience as me, but we do not have a shared culture or community. There is an erasure of mixed race people in North American culture. Our society demands that people choose. Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future was inclusive, and even in later versions of Star Trek, The Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and more recently Picard and Discovery, have continued to reflect his sense of hopefulness and idealism. There are multiple examples of mixed species relationships. However, where Star Trek seems to have gone off the rails is the portrayal of mixed species children. Almost every child of mixed heritage is somehow damaged or forced to choose between their two cultures. The portrayal of mixed species in the Star Trek universe reinforces an imaginary binary of mixed-race people. It reflects the polarized view held by society that children of mixed heritage should be categorized as one or the other, but you cannot be both. Star Trek's vision of interspecies relationships is inclusionary, that is, until they produce offspring, and then they don't quite know what to do with them. In Star Trek, you must choose. The first and most famous of the mixed species characters in Star Trek is Commander Spock. Half human and half Vulcan, a species that has eradicated emotions through suppression. Spock lives his life as though he were pure Vulcan and makes all his decisions on the basis of logic. Despite the fact that he is as much human as he is Vulcan, the only time he expresses emotion is accidentally, or if something is wrong. In one episode, he defeats his best friend Captain Kirk in a battle to the death, and as he was in the process of relinquishing his duties as penance, Kirk surprises him from behind and is actually alive and well. Spock's reaction is a normal human reaction of pure joy, but he quickly regains his composure to the emotionless Vulcan demeanor. In another episode, the entire crew is infected by a bacteria, and unlike his crewmates who appear intoxicated, Spock's reaction is to show emotion. Unable to suppress his reactions, he hides himself away to have a good cry. Even though Spock is both human and Vulcan, in the Star Trek universe, he is required to choose.
I'm in control of my emotions. Control of my emotions.
Not choosing between your two cultures has consequences. Moving on from the original series and on to the next generation. There are more examples of mixed species characters, however, every one of them seems to be tragically flawed. The half-human, half-Klingon character, Claire, in the next generation seems unable to control her temper and unable to resolve differences between her cultures. B'Elanna Torres, a half-human, half-Klingon character from Star Trek Voyager, also has difficulty resolving the different sides of her identity, however, does eventually come to terms with both sides of her nature. It is important to note that in order to do so, she had to be completely genetically separated into two separate people. The children of mixed species characters are inherently deficient. In the examples of human Klingon characters, it is easier to see how they are lacking in attributes, both physical and emotional, compared to their non-mixed counterparts. Compared to Klingons, they are smaller and physically weaker. Compared to humans, they are quicker to anger, rash, and make poor decisions due to their inability to control their temper. Spock defaults to his Vulcan culture and relies on the principles of logic, which to humans is a flaw in his character because human emotion is an essential human characteristic. There is one character that seems to be well adjusted to her mixed heritage, Deanna Troi from The Next Generation. Deanna Troi is the ship's counselor for the Starship Enterprise. She is half human and half Betazoid, a telepathic species that physically resembles humans. Because both species look the same, there are no physical markers that distinguish her from her crewmates. She did possess some of her Betazoid abilities, but they were mostly limited to empathic abilities rather than telepathic abilities, except in rare cases with other Betazoids. Deanna Troi is presented as a well-adjusted child of mixed heritage and is introduced as a very feminine persona with long curly hair and flowing dresses. She is a non-threatening character whose primary role is to ensure the mental health of the ship. Although Deanna Troi is presented as a well-adjusted character, I argue that it is easy to be well-adjusted in a community where not only do you not possess any deficiencies and blend in perfectly, but actually have the upper hand with a power that no one else around you has. I wonder if she would present as well-adjusted had her story continued on Betazoid, where she was the one who did not have the same abilities as the rest of her community. Although I loved her character when the series came out in 1987, it now reads to me that it is easy to be well-adjusted and happy when you're rich, powerful, and beautiful. As my story of my survey course illustrates, it is not only the world of Star Trek that believes that mixed-race individuals should choose between the two cultures that make up their heritage. And if you don't choose, then society will do it for you. Tiger Woods, one of the world's most famous golfers, refers to himself as both black and Asian, but when the world looks at him, he is categorized as a black man. Celebrities like Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman, Halsey, and Slash wind up in articles titled, "Celebrities You Didn't Know Were Biracial."
I mean, I am black, but I'm also white, and just because I have one parent that's black and one parent that's white doesn't mean that, for me, I have to pick. It means I can be both.
There are differing perspectives on whether people who are mixed with white blood are doing so as a way to align themselves with the dominant culture, or whether it is simply a recognition of both sides of your heritage. I tend to agree with the latter statement. The way I see it is that if you agree with the principle that someone who identifies themselves as mixed is doing so as a move towards superiority, then you are agreeing to the basic premise that there is a superior culture to begin with, and that is something I just fundamentally disagree with.
Certainly when I was growing up, there were like a handful of other mixed people that I knew, but whereas I was quite happy to identify as Black and felt really proud of being Nigerian and stuff, some of the other people, they were trying to distinguish themselves from just an ordinary Black person and be like, no, but I'm half white, like I'm better than these other Black people. And that's something that just makes me feel, that's something that makes me feel like really uncomfortable. I don't want to try and distinguish myself from Blackness to put myself that little bit closer to whiteness. And I think that's one of the reasons that I kind of so emphatically like identify as Black.
Both sides of my culture are important, valid, and combined and contained within me in a way that it would be impossible to separate them and make them distinguishable from each other. As celebrities and politicians begin to self-identify as mixed-race people, I hope that popular culture will begin to follow suit. What is this portrayal of mixed species characters telling children of mixed-race parents? It says that they are not complete. I would like to see a mixed species character who is not lacking in any of their parents' abilities and is able to function in both their worlds at 100% capacity.